Your content sounds like everyone else's, and it's not because that you're lazy, not because you haven't worked hard enough, but because of how you were taught to build it. The advice that you followed, where you studied the best, you learned from the top coaches and modeled what already worked. That is exactly what put you in this position. And I want to explain it precisely why, okay, in this video. So if you're running a coaching or consulting business, generating real revenue with paying clients and proof of concept and results, you already know the advice that is existing. And that you find the coaches who are already successful in your space and you study their content, you absorb all their frameworks, you studied hard, you consumed everything. You then cut corners. The result is a business that is well built, technically solid, and almost indistinguishable from 20 other in your space. Not because you failed to execute, but because you executed exactly what you were told. This is not an insult, it is a structural diagnosis. And the way almost everyone builds a personal brand in 2026 produces this outcome by design. It's not occasional, but every time. The method creates the ceiling. And in 2026, that ceiling just got a lot lower. And because AI is now producing derivative content at scale, that is technically correct, emotionally calibrated, and indistinguishable from what almost every coach is posting right now, the trap that used to limit you is now burying you. And you are not realizing it. Okay. And understanding exactly why it happens is the first step to doing something different and getting out of the pit. So let's go through it. How the trap works. Okay. So here's how information moves through a coaching market. We are talking about the coaching market. At the top, a small number of original thinkers in the business coaching space. That might be uh, that you're familiar with, Hormozy, Cole, Cardone, a handful of others. People who build genuine frameworks from their own experience and first principles. Below them, the coaches who learn from those thinkers absorb their frameworks. They build their own brands on top of their foundation. And below them, the coaches who learn from those coaches, one generation of transmission further. And at the bottom of the stage, somewhere in that sequence is you. Yes. And it's not because that you're behind, but because that's how learning works. You find the best people in the space, you observe what they've already figured out, and you build upon it. And the problem is not learning, the problem is what happens next. Most coaches do one of two things with what they've already learned. They teach it directly, sometimes remixed, sometimes repackaged, but traceable back to the original source. Or they teach it indirectly to build some unique selling proposition, building their content around the same underlying worldview, the same diagnostic frame, the same definition of the problem, without realizing the architecture that their thinking is borrowed. And both paths lead to the same place, that the content that your audience has encountered in a different from before. The content that your audience has encountered in a different from before. And it's not because that they follow you and the original thinker at the same time, but because the market has been saturated, overly saturated with the same foundational ideas, explained from every possible angle for years. And you become very good at explaining what someone else already has figured out. Just think about that. And that is that is not nothing, man. But the day you realize it is the ceiling. And here's the uncomfortable part. Your audience already knows, and it's not analytical or conscious. They couldn't write you an essay about it, but the feeling is there, and the low-grade sense that nothing in your content could only have come from specifically you. The recognition that this framework exists somewhere else, the awareness somewhere below the surface that they already follow the person whose thinking you're building on. But the feeling is there, the low-grade sense that nothing in your content could only have come from you specifically. The recognition that this framework exists elsewhere. The awareness somewhere below the surface that they already follow the person whose thinking you're building on. And they don't say this in the comments. They don't DM you about it. They just don't buy. And we are entrepreneurs. We want cash. We don't want fame. So if we don't create a buying environment, what are we doing? People follow, they watch and engage, but they don't buy. And it's because they like you. But they don't believe that your thinking, your thoughts, your novel ideas, your novel angles, your thought, your ideas, your angles are irreplaceable. This is what's exactly happening every time that your audience consumes your content. They're running it through a filter that they didn't build intentionally, and they can't articulate if you ask them. It's a filter that's been calibrated by years of consuming content in your space. And the question the filter is asking is, below conscious thought, is, could this have come from somewhere else? I'm explaining it in first principles. I hope you understand what I'm saying. So the framework and familiar. The framework feels like something they've encountered before. They feel everything familiar. And maybe not your exact words, but the underlying idea that the diagnostic model, the worldview, familiar. They enjoy it, they don't buy it. And if you talk about original ideas, that the framework stops them. It will literally stop because there is a novel, a new idea, creative idea before them. The angle that they haven't encountered before. The diagnosis that names something no one has named before in exactly this way. They screenshot it, they share it, they DM it, they share it everywhere, bro. And most borrowed content reads as familiar. Even excellent borrowed content. Even well produced, high value borrowed content. So I hope you understand what I'm saying. I'm distinguishing between borrowed and original content. And that is the only difference that will help you get your market monopoly position. You can literally monopolize the market if you follow what I'm saying. Because this is based on facts, historical facts. Here, the filter is not about quality, it's about origin. Okay, so here's what makes this so hard to see from the inside. So when you're in the trap, the advice you get is tactics. Fix the hooks, post more, niche down, build a stronger CTA, or rebuild your offer. And here's what makes those tactics painful, really painful. They work for other people. Their coaches recommending them are not lying. They work when the foundation is original, right? They amplify what's already there. Just think about it. If you build your house on the sand, it will fall when the storm comes. But if you build your house from but if you build your house upon the rock, even the storm comes, it will not fall. So that's what I'm saying. When the foundation is borrowed, the tactics are acceleration on quicksand. You post more borrowed content faster. You niche down to a more specific audience that will still run the same filter. You sharpen the hook on a framework they've encountered in a different form before. And the ceiling doesn't move. And you can't understand why, because everything you're doing looks right? And this is what I call, and what is objectively called the mimetic trap. Mimesis, the ancient word for imitation, the way ideas propagate through population by being absorbed and transmitted. Mimetic content is content that comes from someone else's thinking. It doesn't require copying anyone. It just requires that foundational idea, the foundational logic, the worldview, the diagnosis, the underlying logical idea that originates with someone other than you, and a small manageable market with a few hundred of coaches. This, yeah, this idea becomes pretty good, and it's like you are being a big fish in a small pond, and there was enough audience to go around with. Then AI entered the market. The market got bigger the hype, because the hype is increased, and people are flooding in the market. Everyone wants to become a coach. So AI has ingested every framework Harmozy has ever published, every model that Co ever built, every concept from every course, every other coach in your space has ever sold. It can produce a technically correct, emotionally calibrated version of your content, the board version of your content in literally seconds for $20 a month. And here's the line that should stop you right now. If your content can be summarized by a language model, it can be replaced by one, not eventually, right now. Memetic content is not bad. It is invisible. And in 2026, invisible means gone. So every tactic that you have tried sits on top of the foundation. Hook formulas, niche, specificity, posting frequency, offer structure, CTA design, everything. And when the foundation is original, and the content traces back to the the original thinking that could only have come from you, these tactics amplify what's already there, and they help more of the right people find it faster. And when the foundation is borrowed, when the content traces back to a handful of thinkers whose framework have already saturated the market, these tactics do the same. These tactics do something different. They accelerate invisibility. You post the borrowed framework more consistently. It reaches more and more people who have already encountered it in a different form, and it hardens the ceiling. The exit is not a better tactic. The exit is going upstream of tactics entirely. Okay, so I want to give you an example to summarize everything of what I'm saying, and for you that you can understand it properly. We're talking about. I want to give you the example of Napoleon. Napoleon Bonaparte inherited a military tradition built on the doctrine of linear warfare. So simply explain that it is fixed battle lines, rigid formats, and tactical predictability. the way every major European army had fought for a generation. Okay, he studied it completely. Understood every principle, could apply it at a level that no one around him could match. He studied it completely, understood every principle, and could apply it at a level no one around him could match. And then he made a different move. He didn't apply the doctrine. He interrogated it. He questioned it. He asked that what assumption does this rest upon, and where does the logic actually break down when you test it against real condition? Like he's going down the first principle. I hope you can notice that. And then he built his own system, not from the accepted principle, but from what he'd found to be actually true in practice. And the result was every opposing general prepared for an army using familiar doctrine. But what Napoleon did is what the army got was a system built from different first principles. Nothing in the preparation accounted for it. He won battles that shouldn't have been possible, not through superior force, but through an originality of approach that the enemy's model couldn't process. And here's how you find your own word thinking. I want you to ask three questions. Answer them honestly. Question one. Where did this idea originate? It's very simple. Trace any major framework you teach back to its source. If the honest answer is, I learned this from this person, this coach, it's borrowed, okay? If the answer is, I found this from what I've observed and tested it myself, that might be original. Question number two. Could my audience encounter this anywhere else? Not from you, from the courses that you learned from, the books you read, the courses that you took. If yes, they already have it. Your version is additional exposure. Your version is an additional exposure to a familiar frame. Question number three. What do I believe that I can source? The things you've observed and concluded and tested that you've never seen stated clearly by anyone you've studied. These are your first principles. It's very simple. Most coaches have them, and they are at the top. And there are other coaches who have them. They have never turned them into content. So the third question is where the original content lives. And most coaches have more original thinking than they realize. They just haven't trusted it enough to build upon. And because the borrowed frameworks come with authority attached, they were proven by someone with a bigger platform, a larger track record, a more visible result. Your own observations are the things that you have seen that don't match the standard voice and the standard advice. They feel less credible, and more uncertain, like they need to be validated before you can teach them. And that uncertainty is the filter that you've been applying to your own thinking. Gentlemen, we are talking about monopolizing your unique market. This value is critical for a reason. So bear with me. The coaches on the compounding side of the market remove that filter. They build from what they actually know, not from what they were taught to trust. The problem is not downstream, it's at the source. So the exit from the mimetic trap is not a better tactic, but the two paths look like this. The two paths look like this. Downstream, staying in the trap. Better hooks, sharper niche, new offer, different platform, more consistent posting. Each fix is real, and none of them solve the problem. But upstream, the exit, taking back, identify what's actually borrowed and what's actually yours. Simple as that. Find the gaps between what you have been taught and what you actually observe. Build the framework from that gap. Build the foundation from that gap. And this is slower at the start, but we are playing the long-term game. It requires doing real thinking, not consuming more frameworks, but interrogating the ones that you already have. The result is content that cannot be replicated, that cannot be produced by AI, because it traces back to a place AI has never been. Your specific experience, your specific reasoning, your specific conclusions. You know what I'm saying? So your audience runs it through the filter and gets one answer, original, right? And the good news, and this is the part that most coaches in the trap don't know, is that the original thinking is already there. It's already there, bro. We are not building a fucking world from scratch. Just realize and just observe yourself. What makes you, that you can show through your content coupled with your expertise that builds a monopoly. You have observations from your practice that don't match the standard advice. You have beliefs from your own experience that you've never fully articulated. You have a specific way of diagnosing the problem that traces back to what you've seen, not what you've read. The framework isn't missing. It's been buried under the borrowed one. So the first principle system doesn't teach you new thinking. It uncovers what you already know and uh, builds the full content architecture on top of that across three parts. First, your original voice. Second, the trust compounding ecosystem that you must have. And third, the proof system that closes buyers automatically in the DMs. And this is what becomes possible when the foundation is original. Content that stops people mid-scroll because the angle is genuinely new to them. Followers who DM you after three videos because your specific perspective is the only place that they can get in the space. A position in your niche that nobody else can occupy because it traces back to you specifically. And not because you become more knowledgeable, but because you stop transmitting someone someone else's knowledge and started teaching your own. Okay, team. I built a three-part system that takes you exactly through this, A to Z, from diagnosing what's borrowed and building your original voice to the full trust compounding architecture, to the full proof system that makes social proof compound the same way that your content and your voice does. It's called the first principle system. So if you recognize yourself in the trap that I'm describing in this video, DM me the word first on Instagram and I'll send you the rest of the details, okay? That's where we start. So the mimetic trap is not a failure of effort. It is a failure of origin. And origin is the one thing that you can actually change. Thank you for watching this lovely video, gentlemen.